Hi everyone, so I'll be discussing Leetcode 419 problem Battleships in a board. So in this problem we are given an cross and matrix board where each cell is either a battleship or empty. Battleship is represented by character X and we have to return the number of battleships on board. So battleships can only be placed horizontally or vertically on board. In other words, they can only be made of the shape 1 cross k or k cross 1, where k can be of any size. At least one horizontal or vertical cell separates between two battleships. So let's discuss what this problem is trying to convey. So let's say if the board is x dot dot x dot dot x x here and dot. Now these are all battleships represented by X, and these small circles are representing empty space. Now it is mentioned that battleships are placed horizontally or vertically. So uh, if we see according to the problem, this is a battleship. This single X alone is not a battleship. If it is adjacent to other uh, X characters, then it would be counted as single battleship only. So this is a single battleship, and this is also a single battleship because if we go horizontally or vertically, we don't find any um, consecutive X here or here, which means that two separate battleships are present. Now, it is also mentioned that two battleships cannot be basically they are separated basically it cannot be possible that if there is a X here, then there would be X here and X here, because now there would be confusion if this should be considered a battleship or this should be considered a battleship. So that kind of test case is not present. Um, so in this problem, what um, I've done is basically created a visited matrix. So let's say if the input is X, uh, this is the input, let's say, and so what I have done is I have also created a boolean matrix which is initialized by false. This false means that none of these cells are visited yet. When we visit any cell, we will mark it as true. So now if we start from this X, we would look for consecutive X in horizontal direction or vertical direction. Now there is no consecutive X in the horizontal direction. There is an empty space in between, which means that we cannot combine this X with here. So we would see in the vertical direction, and we can see that the both of these can be combined. So we would combine both of them, and uh, initially our answer is 0, and we would increment our answer to 1. And basically, since we have visited these two battleship, we would mark true to here for these two cases. Now we would move to this cell. Now this is an empty space, so we would not do anything. Now again there is an X here. Now again this X can not be combined with here, so we would combine this X with this X in um, vertical direction. So answer would become 2, and we would mark these two as true. This one will be marked 2 and this one will be marked 2. Now we would go to this cell, and this is an empty, so we would not do anything. Now here this is also an X, but we have already visited this one, so we would not visit it again, so we would leave it. And then there is an empty space, so we would not do anything. And similarly here also it is this x is visited, so we would not do anything. Now here this is a 0, basically empty space, so we would mark it, basically leave it. And in all these four cases also we would leave it, but here also we would do the same thing. But now here is an x. Now it is in the last row, so we would not check in the vertical direction, we would only check in the horizontal direction only. So when we move in the horizontal direction, uh, we see these three consecutive x, so we would increase our counter to 3 and mark all these as 2. Now um, there are few corner cases in this problem. So the first thing is that um, this x, if there is an x, let's say um, there wouldn't have we wouldn't have any x here, and this would have been unvisited in that case. So if there is an x in the last element of the grid, then we cannot move in horizontal or vertical direction, because uh, those indexes are out of boundary. So this is the first corner case, and in that case we would simply increment count. Second case would be basically when we have x in the last row. So when x is in the last row and not in this last column, but only in these places only, then in that case we cannot check in vertical direction, because that would be out of boundary, so we would only check in the horizontal direction. So last row means check only horizontal. Last column, if there is a if there is an x in the last column, we would only check in the vertical direction. In all other cases, check both vertical and horizontal. So these are the four cases that we have to keep in mind to solve this problem. Now the time complexity of this problem would be O of mn, and space complexity would be also be O of mn, because I'm using visited matrix also. Now if I try to submit this code, it is getting accepted.